They destroyed his invention, called him trash, and threw him out in front of everyone. 24 hours later, a billionaire's helicopter landed in his neighborhood. What happened next broke the internet. Albert Turner stood on the street corner, holding the shattered pieces of 2 years' worth of work, when the sound of rotors started shaking windows 3 blocks away. But let me take you back to where this all started. 18 hours earlier, inside the most exclusive event in the city, where brilliance was about to meet brutality. The National Youth Innovation Gala. Crystal chandeliers, designer gowns, the kind of wealth that didn't just buy things, it bought people. Albert walked in wearing a thrift store blazer and carrying a device built from scrap metal. He had no idea he was walking into an execution. Gregory Ashford, silver-haired, steel-eyed, worth more than most small countries, spotted him immediately. This wasn't random. This was personal. If you're already feeling something for this boy, don't be the person who watches my entire story and leaves without subscribing. Hit that button now before I make you cry. You'll thank me later. Because 30 years ago, another brilliant black boy had challenged Ashford's world, and Ashford had made sure that boy never challenged anyone again. Security. Ashford's voice cut through chamber music and polite conversation. We have a situation. Albert looked up from arranging his energy converter, the device he'd built in a basement, powered by hope and genius, just in time to see Ashford's Italian leather loafer rising above it. The sound of metal crunching was the sound of a dream dying. Please, please stop. But Ashford wasn't stopping. He was enjoying this. Every broken circuit, every crushed component, every piece of Albert's future scattered across marble floors. This, Ashford announced to the crowd of donors and their perfectly groomed children, is what happens when we lower our standards. Street trash doesn't belong at the National Youth Innovation Gala. The room laughed. They laughed. While a 17-year-old boy who'd spent 2 years building something revolutionary watched it die under the heel of a man who'd never created anything in his life except cruelty. But someone else was watching too. In the back corner, a woman in a staff uniform was recording everything on her phone. Nina Keating, senior strategist for Cross Industries, though no one in that room knew it. Her message was already sent. Sir, they're destroying him. The Turner boy. Live footage attached. Recommande immédiate intervention. 2,000 miles away, on a private jet, Nathaniel Cross watched the video once. Then twice. Then he made a phone call that would change everything. Prep the helicopter. We're going to remind some people what happens when you destroy the wrong person's protege. But Albert didn't know about helicopters or billionaires or revenge 30 years in the making. He only knew humiliation as security guards dragged him outside into the November cold, his invention in pieces, his future a joke they'd already forgotten. What he didn't know was that his name had been on Nathaniel Cross's personal watch list for 3 weeks. That his project had impressed the most powerful man in tech more than anything he'd seen in years. That Cross had flown in specifically to offer him a full scholarship, a mentorship, and enough money to rebuild his dreams 10 times over. And that tomorrow morning, the same wealthy families who'd applauded his destruction would be the ones begging for mercy. But first, Albert had to survive the longest night of his life. And a girl with secrets was about to make a choice that would change everything for both of them. Zara Morrison stood frozen by the presentation tables, her rose gold dress suddenly feeling like a costume in the worst possible play. She'd watched them destroy that boy, Albert, and she couldn't unsee the devastation in his eyes, couldn't unhear the genuine brilliance in his voice when he tried to explain his project before they silenced him. Zara, her mother's manicured nails dug into her wrist. Stay where you are. But Zara Morrison had spent 17 years being told where to stay, what to think, who to be. And tonight, for the first time, she was questioning everything. That was wrong, she whispered. That was necessary. Her mother hissed back. People like that take advantage. People like what? The question hung between them like a blade. Her mother's face softened into the fake warmth she used at charity galas. "Sweet girl, you have such a big heart. But the world isn't as kind as you think it is." Zara looked around the room, at trust fund babies holding devices their tutors had perfected, at adults celebrating the destruction of something genuinely innovative, at a system designed to crush brilliance that came from the wrong zip code. "You're right," she said quietly. "The world isn't kind. But maybe that's because we keep choosing cruelty." That night, while Albert walked through neighborhoods where streetlights flickered and dreams felt like luxuries, Zara Morrison sat in her bedroom, researching his name. What she found changed everything. Science fair victories, teacher recommendations that used words like revolutionary and unprecedented, articles about students from Jefferson High doing impossible things with no resources. Albert Turner wasn't a gatecrasher. He was exactly what the gala claimed to celebrate, until his brilliance came wrapped in the wrong skin, wearing the wrong clothes, carrying the wrong last name. Her phone buzzed. A text from her best friend Madison. "OMG, did you see that poor kid get dragged out? So embarrassing for him. Embarrassing for him." Zara stared at the message until the words blurred, thinking about a boy whose dreams had been shattered for their entertainment. Then she made a decision that would cost her everything. She started recording. Meanwhile, 10 miles away, Albert finally made it home to the small house he shared with his grandmother. Lorraine Turner was waiting in her old armchair, still in nursing scrubs from her overnight shift, her face a map of love and worry. "Baby," she said, and her voice broke his last piece of composure. Albert collapsed into her arms and told her everything. The stares, the accusations, the destruction, the laughter. His voice stayed steady until he got to the part about how they'd crushed his project like it was garbage, and then it shattered. 2 years, Grandma. 2 years of work, and they destroyed it in 30 seconds. Lorraine held him tighter. "Listen to me, Albert Jerome Turner. They can break the device, but they can't break what's in here." She tapped his temple. "That belongs to you. You hear me? But what if they're right? What if I don't belong? Stop." Her voice carried the authority of someone who'd survived everything life could throw and come out stronger. "You belong wherever your brilliance can shine. And if they can't see that brilliance, that's their blindness, not your failure." She made him soup. She always made soup when the world got heavy, and watched him eat with the fierce love of someone who'd raised a genius on hope and determination. What neither of them knew was that Cross Industries had been tracking Albert's work for weeks, that his application had been personally flagged by the most powerful tech innovator in the world, that even as they sat in their small kitchen, a plan was already in motion. Nina Keating wasn't just Cross's senior strategist. She was his secret weapon. Southside Chicago, MIT on scholarships, a woman who recognized hunger when she saw it. And Albert Turner was hungry in the way that built empires. But there was something else Nina had discovered, something that made her blood simmer and her hands shake with controlled rage. The gala had been stealing projects for years, taking brilliant work from underprivileged students and redistributing it to connected families. Gregory Ashford wasn't just a cruel man. He was the architect of systematic theft. Her phone rang. "Cross. Status report. Worse than we thought, sir. It's not just bias. It's organized crime. I'm sending you files now." A pause. Then Cross's voice, cold enough to freeze blood. "How quickly can you get to the Turner house?" 45 minutes. "I'll meet you there at sunrise." It's time Mr. Ashford learned what happens when you steal from my protege. At the same time, 15 miles away in a mansion that cost more than most people would earn in 10 lifetimes, Zara Morrison was making a phone call that would detonate everything. Channel 7 News tip line: "I have footage of corruption at the National Youth Innovation Gala. Yes, I can prove everything. And yes, I'm willing to go on record." Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "My name is Zara Morrison. My parents are major donors, and I just watched them destroy an innocent boy's future for entertainment. She hung up and looked at her reflection in the window. Designer dress, perfect makeup, everything in place except her conscience. Tomorrow, she was going to burn down the only world she'd ever known. And she'd never felt more alive. By sunrise, three separate forces would converge on one goal: justice for a boy who'd been thrown away. But first, the most powerful man in tech had to make a very dramatic entrance. Albert woke to the sound of his neighborhood being invaded. Not thunder, not construction, something that shook windows, rattled doors, and sent every car alarm for 6 blocks into a symphony of panic. 6:47 a.m. Thrum, thrum, thrum. Albert, his grandmother's voice, sharp with urgency but not fear. Never fear. Get down here now. He stumbled to the window and his breath stopped. A helicopter, sleek, matte black, expensive in a way that didn't belong anywhere near his zip code, was descending into the empty lot where Mrs. Chan used to grow tomatoes. The aircraft was beautiful and terrible, like a mechanical angel of judgment. Rotor wash turned fallen leaves into tiny tornadoes, stripped flowers from window boxes, sent trash skittering down the street like confetti at the world's most dramatic party. Neighbors poured onto porches in bathrobes, phones out, recording everything. Mrs. Rodriguez was shouting in rapid Spanish. Mr. Johnson was standing in his doorway in boxer shorts, coffee, a mug forgotten in his hand. And through it all, the helicopter settled onto uneven ground with the precision of something that cost more than every house on the block combined. "Baby," Lorraine called from downstairs. "Who did you make mad?" Albert took the stairs 3 at a time, his heart hammering against his ribs. The helicopter door opened. A woman stepped out first, tall, black, wearing a charcoal suit that looked like armor. She moved like she owned whatever ground she walked on. Behind her, a man emerged. Nathaniel Cross, the billionaire, the legend. The man who'd built an empire from ideas others called impossible. And he was walking toward Albert's house. "Grandma, what do I?" "You answer the door," Lorraine said, smoothing her scrubs, checking her name badge. "With respect and your head high." The knock came exactly 30 seconds later. Polite but firm. Lorraine opened the door, and Albert watched the most powerful man in tech smile at his grandmother, like she was the most important person in the room. "Ms. Turner," Cross said, his voice warm and respectful. "I'm Nathaniel Cross. This is Nina Keating. We flew here specifically to meet your grandson." Lorraine studied them both with her nurse's training, reading them like patients. "You here to help my boy or hurt him?" "To help him," Cross said. "I promise you that." "Then wipe your feet and come in." The living room had never hosted billionaires before. Cross and Nina sat on the old floral couch, worn but clean, the same one Albert had done homework on since elementary school. Lorraine took her throne, the chair from which she'd ruled their small kingdom for years. Albert perched on the coffee table, afraid to breathe wrong. "Albert," Cross said gently, "I saw your project. The energy converter." The words hit like a physical blow. "You what?" Nina opened her portfolio. Inside were his schematics, his technical notes, his efficiency calculations. But also something else, photos of his destroyed device from multiple angles, time-stamped, documented. "We've been tracking your work for 3 weeks, Nina said. "Mr. Cross personally flagged your application. He flew in from Singapore last night to meet you." Albert's world tilted. "But they destroyed it. They said I didn't belong. I know exactly what they did." Cross's voice carried weight. "I watched the video." He slid a tablet across the coffee table. Security footage from the gala played. Crystal clear, every angle, every moment of humiliation preserved. But I also saw something else. The video rewound to show a girl in rose gold, stepping forward, being pulled back by her mother. "Someone tried to help you," Cross said. "Zara Morrison. She's been asking questions about you since last night." "Smart questions." Cross leaned back, his expression serious. "Albert, what happened to you wasn't random. It was systematic." Nina pulled out another file. "For 3 years, The gala has been stealing projects from underprivileged students. Brilliant work from kids who can't fight back, given to wealthy students who take credit. How many? Albert's voice was barely a whisper. 12 students confirmed. All black or Latino. All poor. All brilliant. Cross's jaw was granite. Your project wasn't just good, Albert. It was revolutionary. And they were going to give it to Gregory Ashford's nephew to present as his own. The room went silent, except for Lorraine's old clock ticking. But there's something else, Cross continued, and his voice carried 30 years of controlled rage. This isn't the first time Gregory Ashford has destroyed a brilliant boy's future. Cross reached into his coat and pulled out a photograph, black and white, worn at the edges. A young man, maybe 17, holding a device that looked like a prototype water purification system. 32 years ago, my younger brother Marcus built something incredible. Gregory Ashford accused him of theft, had him arrested, destroyed his reputation. Marcus never recovered. He died 3 years later, overdose, but it was really hope that killed him. Albert stared at the photograph, seeing his own eyes reflected in a boy who'd been broken by the same system. I built this empire on a promise, Cross said quietly, that what happened to Marcus would never happen to another kid. Last night, when I watched Ashford crush your project the same way he crushed my brother's dreams, I knew this was my chance. Cross stood, reaching into his coat again. This time, he pulled out an envelope, cream-colored, embossed with logos Albert recognized from business magazines. Full scholarship to any university you choose. Personal mentorship under my supervision. $150,000 to rebuild your project properly. And an internship at my R&D headquarters. Albert stared at the envelope, unable to move. There's one condition, Cross continued. You come with me. Right now. We're holding a press conference in 90 minutes, and I want you standing beside me when I explain to the world exactly what Gregory Ashford has been doing. Lorraine's hand found Albert's shoulder. Baby, this is your choice. Albert thought about Marcus Cross, a brilliant boy who'd been broken by cruelty, about his grandmother, who'd worked double shifts to keep his dreams alive, about Zara Morrison, who'd risked her mother's anger to try to help him, about 2 years of work crushed under an Italian loafer, about revolution. He reached out and took the envelope. Let's go show them what they threw away. But outside, Gregory Ashford was making phone calls of his own, and the war that was about to start would cost everyone everything, before it gave them back more than they'd ever imagined. The Cross Industries building rose like a glass cathedral, and Albert pressed his face to the helicopter window as they descended toward the landing pad 40 floors above the city. He'd never been this high above his own life. Nervous? Nina asked, reading the tension in his shoulders. Terrified, Albert admitted. Good, Cross said, ending a phone call. Terrified means you understand the stakes. They moved through corridors that smelled like success, leather and coffee, and the kind of quiet that came with serious money. Albert tried not to stare, but everything was beautiful in a way he'd only seen in movies. Conference room 7, Nina murmured. Media's gathering. David handled the guest list. She stopped mid-sentence, staring at her phone. Sir, we have a complication. She showed Cross the screen. A text from an unknown number. My name is Zara Morrison. I was at the gala last night. I know what they did was wrong. Please let me help. I have information about my mother's foundation. I'm in your lobby. The girl who tried to stop them. Cross raised an eyebrow. She's here? Now. Albert's heart kicked against his ribs. She came. Could be a trap, Nina said carefully. Ashford might have sent her. No. The word came out stronger than Albert intended. She tried to help me. I saw her face. She was upset. Really upset. Cross studied Albert. Your instinct about people, are they usually good? Albert thought about his grandmother, about teachers who'd believed in him. Yeah. Then let's find out what Miss Morrison has to say. Zara Morrison sat in the lobby like she belonged there, even though everything about her presence screamed rebellion. She traded the rose gold gown for dark jeans and a cream sweater, her hair in a simple ponytail. Without the formal armor, she looked younger, more real. But her posture, spine straight, hands folded, eyes alert, that was pure old money training. She stood when she saw them approach, and Albert felt that flutter again, the same one from the night before. "Mr. Cross," she said, extending her hand with perfect confidence. "Thank you for seeing me. Ms. Morrison, quite a risk you're taking." "I know." Her voice was steady, but Albert caught the tremor underneath. "My parents think I'm shopping. They don't know I'm here." "Why are you here?" Nina asked. Zara looked directly at Albert, and he felt something shift, a door opening that he hadn't known was closed. "Because what they did to you is wrong," she said simply. "And because I can prove it." She pulled out a tablet, expensive and sleek. "My mother sits on the Morrison Foundation board. Last night, after we got home, she was on phone calls for hours. Damage control. But I recorded some of it." Nina stepped forward. "You recorded your mother?" "I have an app that backs up everything to the cloud." Paranoid parents. Zara's cheeks flushed. "But when I went through the files this morning," she touched the screen. A woman's voice filled the lobby. Chris panicked. "Gregory, you need to fix this. If anyone looks closely at the selection process, compares original applications to what was presented. We've been covering for your nephew for 3 years. If this boy talks," a man's voice, gravelly, "he won't talk. Who's going to listen to him? He's nobody. He was somebody enough to impress Cross Industries. Do you know what Nathaniel Cross could do to us if he investigates? We need to discredit the boy before." The recording cut off. Silence except for air conditioning and distant traffic. "There's more," Zara said quietly. "Financial records, email threads, proof they've been stealing projects for years." Cross's expression had gone very still. "Why give us this?" "Because I'm tired of being on the wrong side," Zara said, her voice breaking slightly. "I've watched my family destroy people who couldn't fight back my whole life. And I'm done." She looked at Albert again. "I don't know you, but I know brilliance when I see it. What happened last night was the worst thing I've ever watched good people do." Lorraine squeezed Albert's shoulder. "Sounds like you found an ally, baby." Nina was already reaching for the tablet. "Ms. Morrison, if we use this, there's no going back. Your family will know it came from you." "I know, even if it costs you everything." Zara glanced at Albert, and something passed between them. Understanding, recognition, the beginning of something that felt like trust. "Especially then," she said. 40 minutes later, they stood outside Conference Room 7. Cameras were positioned, microphones tested, reporters checking phones. "You ready for this?" Zara asked Albert quietly. She'd changed into a blazer Nina found, navy blue, professional, the kind that said, "Take me seriously." "Are you?" She smiled. It transformed her face completely. "I've never been more ready for anything." Cross appeared beside them. 5 minutes. "Remember, this isn't just about justice. It's about making sure no other brilliant kid gets thrown away." His phone buzzed. David's voice through the speaker. "Sir, we have a problem. Gregory Ashford just arrived. He's demanding access to the building." Through the glass walls, they could see him in the lobby, tall, silver-haired, radiating the kind of fury that came from being challenged by people he considered beneath him. "Let him come," Cross said quietly. "Time for Mr. Ashford to learn what happens when you underestimate the power of truth." Albert reached for Zara's hand. Her fingers intertwined with his, warm and steady. "Whatever happens," she said, "we face it together." "Together," Albert agreed. But Gregory Ashford had spent 30 years perfecting the art of destruction, and he was about to reveal just how far he was willing to go to protect his empire of theft. The press conference lasted exactly 18 minutes. 18 minutes of devastating evidence, carefully delivered statements, and Gregory Ashford's 3-decade pattern of theft exposed to a room full of journalists with very sharp teeth. Albert had been brilliant, clear, confident, holding up pieces of his broken device while explaining how he'd built it with nothing but genius and determination. Zara had been luminous, composed, and articulate as she laid out her family's complicity. Cross had been masterful, weaving 30 years of buried injustice into a narrative that should have dominated headlines for weeks. It should have felt like victory. Instead, as they walked back toward Cross's office, Albert felt ice forming in his stomach. "That was too easy," he said quietly. "What do you mean?" Cross asked. "Ashford, you just sat there. Men like that don't roll over." Zara frowned. Maybe he's waiting to see how bad. David's voice crackled through the intercom, tight with panic. "Mr. Cross, you need to get to your office. Now." They found David behind Cross's desk, his usually perfect composure shattered. Multiple screens showed news feeds, social media, legal documents. "Sir," David said carefully, "we have several problems. The first screen, Cross Industries under federal investigation for financial irregularities. The second, billionaire exploits poor teenager in revenge fantasy against respected philanthropist. The third, emergency restraining order. Zara Morrison declared mentally unstable." Albert felt the room spin. "Ow!" Cross's voice was deadly quiet. "He was ready," David said. "The financial investigation is real. Anonymous tips, overseas accounts, tax irregularities that'll take years to disprove. But there's more." Nina appeared in the doorway, her face grim. "Albert's school just suspended him. Academic dishonesty. Someone provided evidence that his project was copied from stolen university research." "That's impossible," Albert started. "And there's worse," Nina continued. "Your grandmother was arrested 20 minutes ago. Outstanding medical debt warrants that someone made sure were executed today." The words hit Albert like physical blows. His reputation destroyed. His grandmother arrested. His future built on lies, according to half the internet. "Zara," he whispered. She was staring at the restraining order. "My parents. They're saying I'm having a breakdown, that I'm not competent to make decisions." Her voice cracked. "They're having me committed. For my own safety." Through the glass walls, they could see them coming. 2 security guards, a woman in a white coat, and behind them, the man who'd orchestrated everything. Gregory Ashford. He wasn't hiding anymore. Cross turned from the window, and Albert saw something he'd never expected. Defeat. Real, bone-deep defeat. "I'm sorry," Cross said quietly. "I thought I was strong enough to protect you. I thought 30 years of building power would be enough." The security team reached the office door. "I don't regret it," Zara said fiercely, looking at Albert. "When they tell you I was crazy, when they make you doubt everything, remember that I was never more sane than when I chose to stand with you." The door opened. "Ms. Morrison?" The doctor stepped forward. "We're here to help." Zara straightened her shoulders, and for a moment she looked exactly like the powerful woman she could have become. Then she walked toward the door. "This isn't over," she whispered to Albert. "It can't be over." And then she was gone. But sometimes the darkest hour is just the moment before dawn. And sometimes the most powerful weapon is the thing they think they've already destroyed. Midnight. The basement of Jefferson High School smelled like industrial cleaner and revolution. Albert sat cross-legged on concrete, surrounded by the remnants of his destroyed project and a laptop Nina had given him before everything collapsed. Code scrolled across the screen, not elegant classroom programming, but the rough, functional kind learned by necessity. He'd been here for 8 hours. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "They have me at Wellspring Recovery, but they let me keep my phone for therapy. I recorded something before they took me. Check your email." Albert's heart hammered as he switched to email. A video file from Zara's account. Her face filled the screen, urgent and determined. "If you're watching this, they got to me. But I managed to get something first." The camera shifted to show a laptop screen filled with email threads. "Look at the timestamps, Albert. They knew Cross was planning something weeks ago. Someone's been feeding them information. Albert watched in horror as Zara scrolled through communications between Ashford and someone Mark and Kay. Dates, times, details about Cross's investigation. There's a mole, Zara's voice continued. Someone inside Cross Industries. That's how they were ready for everything. The video ended. A mole. Someone Cross trusted had been betraying him. His phone rang. Nina. Albert? Where are you? Cross is worried. Nina, he interrupted. Who has access to Cross's private files? A pause. That's classified. Why? Because Ashford was ready for everything. Too ready. Another pause. Longer. Albert, where are you? Something in her voice, careful neutrality, made him hesitate. Somewhere safe, he said. But Nina? I think I know how to fix this. He hung up before she could respond. The workshop door creaked. Albert spun around, expecting security. Instead, David Chong stood there, looking exhausted but determined. You're hard to find, David said, entering the workshop. Good thing Cross mentioned you worked here. David? How did you? Track your phone? I designed half of Cross's security systems. David set up his own laptop. But that's not why I'm here. Then why? David's screen filled with financial records, communication logs. Because you're right about the mole, and I've been running my own investigation. Nina Keating, David said quietly, has been in contact with Ashford's people for months. Hidden accounts, encrypted messages, regular payments. Albert felt sick. Nina, she's been playing a long game. Get close to Cross, gain his trust, feed information back. The whole thing was orchestrated. David scrolled through evidence. The financial investigation, Nina provided it. Anonymous tips, carefully constructed evidence. She's been building this for months. Why? Money. Ashford's been paying her more than Cross ever could. David showed bank records. But here's the thing. She doesn't know I know. What do you mean? David smiled grimly. We feed her false information. Make her think Cross is planning to run. Give Ashford confidence. Make him overplay his hand. Albert's phone buzzed. Another text from Zara. Her and my mother on the phone. They're planning something big. Something final. Be careful. We're running out of time, David said. Albert stood, feeling something shift inside him. Strength returning, hope kindling. Then we better be ready. He looked around the workshop at his broken project, at tools that had shaped him. David, how quickly can you get me access to the building systems? 30 minutes. Good, because I have an idea. Albert moved to the workbench. Ashford thinks he won because he destroyed my project, but he never saw the real innovation. What do you mean? Albert began extracting components from the broken device. The energy converter was never just about electricity. It was about data storage, about creating a wireless transmission network. Understanding dawned in David's eyes. You built a broadcasting system. I built a truth device. Albert's hands were steady now, confident. And tomorrow, when Ashford thinks he's safest, we're going to turn his whole world into our transmission platform. Sometimes the best revenge is just the truth, amplified loud enough for everyone to hear. 3:47 a.m. Cross Industries building. Albert crouched behind server racks on the 38th floor, his rebuilt device humming quietly in a briefcase. It looked nothing like the original, sleeker, more sophisticated, with components David had helped him acquire. But its true power wasn't in the elegant housing. It was in a network of microtransmitters he'd embedded throughout the building over the past 4 hours. Every conference room, every executive office, every space where secrets were shared and lies were crafted. All connected, all recording, all ready to broadcast. You sure about this? David whispered, checking his tablet. I'm sure. Albert's voice was steady. Send the message to Nina. David's fingers flew across his screen. Done. Telling her Cross is about to confess everything and implicate Ashford. She'll want to record it. Through security feeds, they watched Nina enter the building, thinking she was gathering evidence for Ashford. Instead, she was about to document her own destruction. Ready, David asked. Albert thought about Marcus Cross, the brilliant boy who'd been broken by the same system. About his grandmother, sitting in a jail cell for the crime of being poor. About Zara, locked away for choosing truth over comfort. "Light it up," he said. The device activated. Throughout the building, every transmitter came online. The conversation about to happen in the boardroom would broadcast on every frequency. Emergency channels, news networks, social media platforms, even hijacking local television stations. But more than that, the network began pulling data. 30 years of stored communications, encrypted files, financial records, all of it flowing through Albert's device, all of it broadcasting to the world in real time. In the boardroom, Gregory Ashford sat across from Cross, confident and cruel. "Nathaniel," Ashford was saying, his voice carrying clearly through the building's audio system, "this is your last chance. Resign quietly, and this unfortunate situation disappears." Cross remained silent. "Refuse, and the boy suffers more. His grandmother faces additional charges. That unstable Morrison girl. Psychiatric holds can be extended indefinitely with the right medical opinions." On screens across the city, phones, laptops, televisions, people were watching Gregory Ashford threaten a teenager and his family. But they were also seeing documents flooding the internet. 30 years of stolen projects. Financial records showing systematic bribery. Email threads proving conspiracy. And at the center of it all, Nina Keating's voice from a recording David had captured. "Cross has no idea. I've been feeding you information for months. The Turner boy, the investigation. I gave you everything you needed to destroy them." In the boardroom, phones started ringing. Cross stood slowly, watching evidence fill the screens around the room. "Gregory," he said quietly, "I believe you have some explaining to do." The doors burst open. Federal agents flooded in. Behind them came reporters, prosecutors, and families of students whose dreams had been stolen, all there to witness justice finally arriving. But there was one face that made Albert's heart stop. Zara Morrison stepped into the room, flanked by her own lawyers. She'd changed from hospital clothes into a sharp business suit, her eyes blazing. "Actually," Zara said, pulling out her tablet, "I have something to say." New footage filled every screen, recordings from the psychiatric facility. "She's perfectly sane," a doctor's voice played clearly. "The commitment was financial. The Morrison family paid us to keep her here regardless of mental state." Gregory Ashford, the lead agent, stepped forward. "You're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and racketeering." As handcuffs clicked, Ashford looked around desperately. "You don't understand. Kids like Turner don't belong in our world." Cross walked slowly toward him. "Kids like Turner? You mean brilliant kids who remind you that genius doesn't come with a price tag." He looked directly into the main camera. "Marcus would have been 49 today. He would have changed the world. Instead, he's dead because of you." Cross straightened, his voice carrying to every person listening. "This ends today. Starting immediately, Cross Industries will fund scholarships for every student whose work was stolen. We're creating the Marcus Cross Institute for young innovators. Every brilliant kid, regardless of background, gets a chance." The applause started with Lorraine Turner in the back, somehow freed, somehow there, beaming with pride. But it spread through the room, the building, the city. In the chaos of celebration and arrests, Albert felt a hand slip into his. "Zara, nice job with the broadcast system," she said quietly. "Very dramatic." "Nice job getting declared sane," he replied. "Very you." She laughed, genuine and free and beautiful. "So what happens now?" Albert looked around the room, at Cross finally smiling, at his grandmother crying happy tears, at federal agents leading away the man who'd terrorized brilliant kids for decades. "Now we build something beautiful," he said. "And sometimes the most powerful weapon is just refusing to stay silent long enough for truth to find its voice." 6 months later, Albert Turner stood in a laboratory that felt like stepping into the future, watching 12 brilliant teenagers from 12 different backgrounds work on projects that could change the world. The Marcus Cross Institute for Young Innovators occupied an entire floor of gleaming downtown space, with equipment most universities couldn't afford. But the real magic wasn't in the technology, it was in the energy of dreams finally given room to breathe. Ready for this? Zara's voice came from behind him, warm with affection and bright with excitement. He turned, and his heart still skipped. Zara Morrison, who'd legally changed her name to Zara Cross in honor of Marcus, stood holding a tablet, wearing work clothes that somehow looked more elegant than formal wear. She'd transferred to Jefferson High for senior year, trading privilege for authenticity. Her parents had disowned her, but Cross had become a second father, and Albert's grandmother had claimed her with fierce maternal love. "I'm ready," Albert said, though his hands trembled slightly. "You sure this will work?" "Your math is perfect," Zara said, checking his calculations again. "Energy conversion rate is 87%. Storage capacity is revolutionary. Wireless transmission range beyond anything thought possible." She looked up, eyes bright with pride. "Besides, I've learned to trust brilliant boys with impossible ideas." The demonstration was starting in minutes. Cross had invited everyone, reporters, investors, government officials, and most importantly, families of kids whose innovations had been stolen. Today, Albert would present his rebuilt energy converter not just as a device, but as proof that brilliance couldn't be crushed. Nervous, Cross appeared, looking more peaceful than Albert had ever seen him. The federal trials were over. Ashford was serving 15 years, and Nina had cooperated for a reduced sentence. But more than that, Cross looked like he'd finally kept his promise to Marcus. Terrified, Albert admitted. "Baby," Lorraine Turner's voice cut through anxiety. His grandmother approached in her best navy dress, the one for church and special occasions, wearing the smile that had carried them through everything. "You listen to me," she said, straightening his collar. "You already won. The moment you chose to fight instead of stay quiet, you won. Everything else is celebration." She kissed his forehead, same blessing she'd given every morning since he was small. "Now go show them what my grandson can do." The presentation lasted 23 minutes. Albert explained not just how the device worked, but why it mattered. How it could bring electricity to communities that never had it. How it could power schools, emergency shelters, research stations. But mostly, he talked about dreams. "This device started as a way to help my grandmother save money on electricity," he said, voice steady and strong. "But it became proof that innovation doesn't come from privilege. It comes from necessity. From refusing to accept problems everyone else ignores." He gestured to his fellow students, to families in the audience, to the future taking shape around them. The Marcus Cross Institute exists because someone decided brilliance shouldn't be limited by zip codes. That innovation belongs to anyone creative enough to imagine solutions and determined enough to build them. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. After the crowd dispersed, after reporters finished interviews, after investors signed checks and officials made promises, Albert found himself with Zara on the Institute's roof garden. The city sparkled below, full of problems waiting to be solved. "So," Zara said, settling beside him on the bench Cross had installed for Marcus, "what's next for the brilliant Albert Turner?" "MIT in the fall. Full scholarship plus research grants." He still marveled at saying it. "You?" "Stanford. Computer science and social justice. Someone needs to build systems that protect the next generation of brilliant kids." They sat in comfortable silence, watching sunset over a city that felt different, more hopeful, more inclusive. "Albert," Zara's voice was soft. "Yeah, I love you." The words settled between them like promises, like beginnings. "I love you too," he said, meaning it completely. She leaned against him, and he wrapped his arms around her, thinking about how much had changed since that night when everything was broken. His device hummed quietly in the lab below, converting heat into clean energy. But its real achievement wasn't technical. It had converted pain into purpose, humiliation into hope, silence into a voice loud enough to change the world. Tomorrow would bring new problems, new students to mentor, new innovations to nurture. But tonight, on a roof garden above a city full of possibilities, two brilliant kids who'd refused to stay quiet held each other and planned the future they were building together. Because sometimes the most powerful force in the universe is just the refusal to let anyone convince you that you're not enough. 1 year later, the MIT lecture hall buzzed with nervous energy as Professor Elena Vasquez announced the winners of the National Innovation Challenge. 300 of the brightest college students in the country had submitted projects. Only 5 would be funded. Albert Turner sat in the third row, holding Zara's hand, watching his energy storage system, now refined, patented, and ready for global deployment, change the world in real time. First place, Professor Vasquez announced, goes to Albert Turner of MIT for a renewable energy storage and transmission system that could revolutionize how we power underserved communities worldwide. The applause was thunderous. But Albert wasn't thinking about the prize money or the headlines that would follow. He was thinking about a boy named Marcus who never got to see his dreams realized, and a grandmother who'd worked double shifts to keep those dreams alive. "Go on, baby genius," Zara whispered, squeezing his hand. "Time to change the world." As Albert walked to the stage, his phone buzzed with messages. From his grandmother, "So proud I could burst. Marcus will be proud too." From Cross, "The Institute now has 50 brilliant kids from 47 states. You started something beautiful." From David, "Ashford just lost his appeal. Justice is served. Time for celebration." But it was the last message that made him smile. From a number he didn't recognize, "Saw you on the news. I'm a sophomore at Jefferson High. Built something in my garage that might interest you. Can you help?" Keisha Williams. Another brilliant kid. Another dream waiting to be nurtured. The cycle continuing. At the podium, looking out at faces that represented the future of innovation, Albert thought about that night 18 months ago, when everything seemed broken. "This award isn't just mine," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. "It belongs to every kid who's ever been told they don't belong, who's been told their dreams are too big, their backgrounds too small." He found Zara in the audience, her face glowing with pride and love. It belongs to the girl who risked everything to stand for truth when standing was dangerous. To the billionaire who remembered what it felt like to lose a brother and decided no other family should suffer that loss. To the grandmother who worked 3 jobs to keep one boy's dreams alive. His voice grew stronger. But mostly it belongs to the future we're building together. A future where brilliance is recognized wherever it lives, where innovation serves everyone, not just those who can afford it. He held up the award, crystal and metal, beautiful and heavy. "This is for Marcus Cross, whose dreams were stolen, but whose legacy lives on. And for every brilliant kid who refuses to stay quiet in the face of injustice." The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. That evening, in a small restaurant near campus, for people sat around a table sharing stories and planning revolutions. Albert and Zara, hands intertwined, talking about Stanford and MIT and the startup they'd launched together after graduation. Cross, looking younger than his years, describing the Institute's expansion plans. Lorraine, wearing her first dress that wasn't for church or work, beaming as she watched her grandson plan to save the world. "To Marcus," Cross said, raising his glass. "To Marcus," they echoed. "And to the future," Zara added, looking at Albert, "where love and justice and brilliant ideas change everything." They clinked glasses in a restaurant full of dreams coming true, while outside the window, A city full of problems waited to be solved by the next generation of innovators who refused to be told they didn't belong. Albert's phone buzzed again. Another message from Keisha Williams. Forgot to mention, I'm building a water purification system from recycled electronics. Sound familiar? Looking forward to your help. He showed the message to the table. Cross smiled, the first completely joyful smile Albert had ever seen from him. The cycle continues. The cycle continues, Albert agreed, already drafting a reply to a brilliant girl in his old neighborhood who was about to discover that dreams, once nurtured, could survive anything. And in a mansion across town, Gregory Ashford sat in a prison cell, finally understanding that the most powerful force in the world wasn't money or connections or the ability to silence truth. It was the refusal of brilliant minds to stay quiet. My beautiful Ducal Tales family, if this story reminded you that your dreams are worth fighting for, that brilliance comes from determination more than privilege, that love and justice can triumph over cruelty and greed, then I need you to tell me in the comments. What did you feel this story most deeply? When Albert's invention was destroyed, or when it was reborn stronger? When Zara chose truth over comfort, or when their love grew from shared courage? Share this with someone who needs to remember that being brilliant isn't about where you come from. It's about refusing to let anyone convince you that you're not enough. Subscribe to join the Ducal family, because every week we celebrate the truth that the most powerful revolution is just deciding to dream bigger than the world thinks you deserve. Until next time, keep building beautiful, impossible things.